Hi, everybody. This is Eve Harow on Rejuvenation for the Land of Israel Network. Taping this Sunday morning, March 8th, 2020, the 12th day of Adar, 5780. Beautiful morning here in the Judean Hills in my home. The start of a crazy week. So it's the week of Purim. It's the week of the holiday where things are hidden, where things are masked. They're not what they seem. God is hidden. He's like all over, but he's never mentioned. The focus is Iran, right? Persia, ancient Persia, and Iran, and evil people trying to consolidate power, like what's happening in China now, under the chaos. So it's really, if you look at things not just being coincidental, I don't know what on earth is going on. So I've been getting some mail and some people saying, are you under quarantine? Are you under quarantine? Because some people, as you guys know, I was at the AIPAC Shabbaton last weekend. I was at AIPAC itself for a couple hours on Sunday morning before I had to leave early in order to get home for the Israeli elections. Spoke about that last week. But there's all these rumors about AIPAC that people who were there got sick and that everybody there is in quarantine. I actually had a WhatsApp rumble with somebody whom I ordinarily respect very much, but thought did something irresponsible and put on his Facebook page that everybody who went to AIPAC has to go into quarantine. At least those Israelis who were there, based on a conversation he had about his situation with the health ministry. And I think you have to be super, super careful before you post something that can get other people in trouble. If we're put under quarantine, that's a law. And if you break quarantine, you could technically go to jail for 7 years. And so to put something like out there, which can affect other people, I was not happy with, and I thought was super irresponsible. And as it turns out, at least as of last night, and of course things can change in a second, the health ministry in Israel did put out a statement that people who had gone to AIPAC need to go into quarantine if they return to Israel after March 5th, which of course I did not. So that's why I'm sitting here free to go after I tape this show. But especially with all the hysteria and all the panic, I think people have to be super, super careful before they post anything, because then it can cause there's so much misinformation out there. And that's kind of what's bothering me, is that nobody really knows what's happening. And like my husband is a physician, he's an internist. He is directly in contact every single day with the health ministry. They are sending out updates to the doctors here, but it's a little frightening as to what they really don't know. They still don't know how this is being spread. They know that a lot of people are walking around asymptomatic. So I guess there's reasons for the quarantine. I would hope there's reasons for the quarantine. All right. At some point, you do have to trust the ministries in your country, that they're making the right decisions. But I keep thinking to myself, do they know something that we don't know? Because Israel is taking a huge, huge hit economically. I know that my guiding for today was canceled, and the JLI, which is a huge Chabad group that comes every single year. Hundreds of people come. It involves like 18 different guides. I was asked to guide this year. It's the first time. Usually they only have male guides. Haven't really gotten an answer to why that is. But this year they hired 2 female guides. I was one of them. It's supposed to start next Sunday, 8-day trip. Tremendous amount of work went into this by the tour operator, pretty much planning it for a year. You can imagine logistically, because all the buses are going to different places every day and things have to be booked and organized. And that was canceled. So, and my March is now open, and I'm certainly not the only tour guide who is feeling that. I'll be very surprised if people really have tourists that are coming in. So there's a huge economic hit that's happening here. This is not something that Israel is going to take lightly, at all. So I do trust the authorities here that they're trying to contain the spread, that they know what they're doing. They understand also it has diplomatic ramifications, because there are countries that Israel has said, no more flights from your country. We're not accepting people from your country coming in, like the European countries, and obviously the Far East countries where this is also rampant, and so that's caused some diplomatic blowback. So this is a very, very big picture, and medical and secure, relevant or needed medical and security personnel are not being allowed to leave Israel. So this is, I don't know where you're sitting and where you're hearing this, and if it's as kind of up in the air where you are as it is here. But this is turning into a super, super, super big deal. And a lot of people, like I said, going into quarantine. Just a really personal story. So as many of you know, I've spoken about it before. One of my sons is studying medicine in Italy, as are thousands of Israelis all over Europe, because Israel has affirmative action. Discussion for another time, as I keep saying, on why we do that. And I'm become very much against affirmative action now on like so many levels. You deserve a place, get a place. Doesn't matter if you're female, black, white, Arab, Jewish, whatever. In the meantime, they're supposed to be graduating this week in Italy. My husband and I were supposed to go to the graduation. It's in a place called Pavia outside of Milan in the Lombardy region. So we can't go already. We knew that for a couple of weeks. He and his 6-month pregnant wife were here a couple of weeks ago for the wedding that we made and for the bat mitzvah of my granddaughter. And then they went back to Italy. And now, as of a few hours ago, northern Italy is on lockdown. So they were waiting there this week in order for him to get his diploma pretty much in a closed room and get out. And now they can't get out. So I don't know what's going to be. And it's definitely of concern on you can imagine every single level. So we're seeing what's going to happen. But so you have to figure that the authorities, maybe they're being overly cautious. Maybe they have some information, some medical information that the public doesn't have about how dangerous this is, because it doesn't seem to have even the high mortality rate that like the flu has. But then you can also put it into a different context, which is Iran is taking a really big hit, right? That even some of the leaders of Iran have died or are getting quite sick from this. How is this being interpreted in Iran? You would think that in like a normal Western country, so what they're going to do is they're going to hunker down, they're going to try and get their people well and do what a country would do that actually cared about its people. But reports coming out of Iran, if any of you are following, are not exactly that. A lot of the medical personnel were lied to, were exposed. People are sicker. Apparently, more people are sick than they had admitted to before. And how were they interpreting this through their Shia eschatological lens, right? Where they're saying there's going to have to be some massive apocalypse in order for the Mahdi, in order for their religious leader, their version of Messiah, to come, and for the whole world to go Islamic, mainly Shia Islamic, right? So how are they seeing this over there? Are they seeing that this is the setup, that this is divine intervention to cause a chaotic situation so that they can perpetrate whatever it is that they feel has to happen? So when you look at it from that perspective, so, where it looks like the Israeli elections where the Israeli elections didn't have any definitive results, where the Americans are looking like a complete mess, okay, and the what's going on with the Democrats and the hatred against Trump and all of that. So it's looking like a lot of things aren't clear and there's a lot of chaos. And what do they do with that? Do they try and calm the chaos or do they take advantage of the chaos? So that's also out there. And we have to realize that we can't look at things as usual. We shouldn't look at things and project them through the way that we would deal with them. Let's say the way Israel, the way Italy, the way certain states in America are now dealing with them, which is let's just get people well. Let's try and stop the spread of this. When you don't care about your people and when you have some kind of religious idea, religious vision that involves a whole lot of people dying, including your own, all right, not trying to save your own, then you might be interpreting this slightly differently. So, we need to be looking at that. The same thing with China. It appears that the Chinese leadership is just using the lockdown and the fact that that things started in China as an excuse to consolidate power. When you have people in quarantine, you have people not moving, and more dependent on the authorities and even less free than they were a few weeks ago, which I don't know how that could be in China, but apparently it is, where every move is monitored. So, what's going on in China? And how were they interpreting this? So this is really like, the situation is really very interesting, and we don't know. And we just don't know, which fits back into that Purim time where that things are just not clear and where masks are being worn. Ironically, masks are being worn. And it's very hard, maybe only in hindsight, or especially in hindsight, we'll be able to figure out what went on here. My husband and I on Shabbat, since I'm not under quarantine, were in the north. There was a very long-planned reunion for B'nai Akiva Los Angeles. B'nai Akiva is the Zionist youth organization in Los Angeles, and many people ended up moving to Israel, people who were part of that organization. It's where I met my husband in summer camp when I was 15 years old. So it was definitely an important movement for me. So there was a reunion that was organized for people, not just the people who moved to Israel, who from B'nai Akiva Los Angeles, and the people who went to what was called at the time the Rambam High School, but some people even flew in from the States. Even with everything going on, they flew in from the States to share their memories, to share their experience, really to have a reunion. It was about 100 people, and it was really amazing. I was kind of on the younger side of that. I was one of the only people in their 50s. Hard to feel young these days when I'm 59, but in this particular situation, I did. For whatever reason, some of the younger set, the group more around my age, didn't come. It was more the people from the older years, the early years, the 60s and the 70s, B'nai Akiva in Los Angeles. We had some very incredible shlichim, emissaries that Israel sent out to Israelis who then ran B'nai Akiva for 2, 3, 4 years in different places. So we had some really top people that had come out to Los Angeles. Dear Zeke, who passed away in 2005, who later became also a movie producer, and really he had a radio station at the time in Arutz Sheva. He really became a tremendous voice here in Israel. Still missed today. His widow did come. She participated in the reunion because she was also there with him, of course, and a very important part of his shlichut, of his time in Los Angeles. And I was speaking to her for a while. Yisrael Harel, who was one of the paratroopers who liberated Jerusalem in 1967 and became also a very well-known journalist in Israel, somebody who's really speaks very much for the Jews living in the different communities here in Judea and Samaria. And he came to the reunion, as did some of the other ones who I didn't know because they were the emissaries before I joined B'nai Akiva. But I was also privileged to give a class after lunch. I spoke about the Adam Zertal, and the who I'd interviewed here a few months before he passed away in 2015, who was the one who discovered these foot-shaped enclosures in the tribal area of Menashe, and also Joshua's altar. So I gave a class on that a little bit with some pictures. Usually it's a PowerPoint. Couldn't do that on Shabbat because we don't use PowerPoints, but had some pictures printed out, sources in the Bible that about what these foot-shaped enclosures might be. I think it's a really fascinating topic, and I was pretty sure that most of the people there were not aware of this. And so it was really great to be able to teach people for whom I have a tremendous amount of respect. A lot of the people there have become very well-known physicians and teachers and journalists. And it's just, reunions are interesting. You don't see people for 30, 40, 50 years. Obviously, everybody changes. People, now have children and grandchildren, and some people even there had great-grandchildren. And of course, everyone's changed physically and had their journey in life. For some people, not so easy. Widowed early, raised children alone, or went through what people go through, a life lived. And of course, those of us who ended up moving to Israel chose a different path than those who decided to stay in Los Angeles, but it was very much an Israel-focused weekend. And so it was interesting to go there. We had a tour on Friday, and I have to say, I was not crazy about the tour guide that took us around, but then again, I've got pretty high standards when it comes to tour guides because the people that I surround myself with are really incredible people and the people that I learn from all the time. So it's kind of not fair for me to say that because, like I said, I have incredibly high standards of the people that are around me. But it was great to be in the Galilee. It's so beautiful there, and the flowers in the winter. And we were in Sipori for a little while, which is where the Mishnah was redacted in this third century, and just we went to the Arbel, to the synagogue there at the foot of the Arbel Cliffs outside of Tiberias. So it's just nice to get around. It's nice to get around and not be the one responsible for taking people around, I have to say as well, and just kind of enjoy it as a participant. Even though I have to admit, I did take the mic for a few minutes on the bus because there were just some things that I wanted to fill in for everyone, and I couldn't hold myself back, and they asked me. So I said, okay. So anyway, that's kind of it for today. It seems dissonant or a little inappropriate to sit and talk about Purim cheer with all this is going on. More focused on really what Purim means in a bigger reason, because I don't believe in coincidence. I don't believe in things happening. Very often something happens and then you open the weekly portion, or you look at the Daf Yomi, you look at the page that's learned, the Gemara page that's learned that day, and you're like, wow, that's kind of a coincidence. This is going on. And the sages talked about this a long time ago, or the Torah mentioned something that has to do with this even longer ago. And but the issue is how to interpret it. So as part of this reunion weekend, we had a very, very, very interesting Torah lesson from Rabbi Karlinsky, who was also part of Bnei Akiva. That's why he was there, obviously, in those early years. But he gave a very, very interesting Torah lesson on what's happening now in modern day politics, trying to see it in terms of our history, bringing sources way back from the Zohar, sources from a few hundred years ago, talking about the Jewish return to the land, reminding us as well as he did, that's so important, that when we talk about when Yishmael is going to control the land, it's going to be when it is desolate. And remember, Yishmael is not Islam. When the rabbis are talking about Ishmael, way back 15, 16, 1700 years ago, it's before Islam has risen as a religion. So we're talking about Arabs, and we're talking about people who claim descendancy from Abraham, from Ishmael, and that's ultimately the battle, right? So now we've got this religious thing going on with Islam and Judaism and also Christianity, which is seen as coming from Edom, just to get back to the ancient nations and where today's religions are seen to source from, at least from the Jewish sages, right? Edom, Christians are seen as coming from Edom, Esav, mainly through Herod. Okay, that seems to be the hook from the research that I've done, is that the Edomites in Idumea control what is now mainly good parts of Judea, including, let's say, Hebron, all right, during the time periods of, let's say, the Second Temple period, for a good period of time there. Herod is from an Idumean family who is converted into Judaism during the time of the Hashmonaim, of the Maccabees. Herod is seen as the Judean vassal king of Rome, all right? And then later on, Rome becomes Christianity, 324, right? Constantine converts to Christianity and takes the Roman Empire into what we then call the Byzantine Empire. So it is on that trail that Christianity is seen as sourcing out of Edom. So when you talk about the different conflicts and the different tensions that are going to be between Edom, Ishmael, and Jacob, Israel, so we put the religious emphasis on it now, but if you go back to biblical times, it's nations. And so he reminded us of that in a brilliant Torah lesson that he gave us with a lot of different sources from many, many different places. But what does that mean for today? He was loath, and I admire him for that, to draw any conclusions, because we really can't. But all he could say is that people who wrote 300, 400, 500 years ago about what's happening in the land of Israel would have been blown away by the Israel that they see today, what's happened in the 20th and the 21st century, and how not just the Judeans came back to our land, but how the land is flourishing under its rightful owners, which is Israel. And the facts are in front of your face. I mean, you might want to deny it and you might want to say it's not true, but the fact is, when you look around, you can see an Israel that is blossoming in ways that we have the witnessing for over the last centuries and even a couple of millennia didn't happen until now. So the clique, right, the rightful people have come home, and the land is answering that. And the Torah learning is like never before. How much of the Torah studies are going on here? How Israel's really become the center of Torah learning. Also, was not clear, and this is also especially since 1967. So we are very wise in hindsight. We can put pieces together. As I said, with the 2020 vision backwards, it's very hard to see, though, with all the chaos of today, where this is all going, how long it's going to take before things settle down. And, so those of us who are writing and those of us who are trying to figure things out now, maybe things will become clearer in a few weeks, in a few months, in a few years, in 100 years, where someone will look back and say, yeah, like now we see what's happening. Kind of like the story of Esther itself, which is the last book, Megillat Esther, the last book to make it into the biblical canon, and not without controversy among the sages if it should be included in the biblical canon at all. It's a story that happens outside the land, as we said. It's a story that centers in Shushan, in Purim. It's a story where God is not clear, where he's not mentioned, where his face is hidden. And really, it looks like it doesn't really fit into what would be, part of the biblical canon. There are a whole lot of books that don't make the cut, thousands and thousands and thousands of books that don't make the cut, including, as we spoke about a few weeks ago, the books of the Maccabees and the books that go along with the story of Hanukkah, which becomes also one of our holidays. And the same prayer that we say Al Hanisim on the miracles, two different versions that we say only on Purim and on Hanukkah about miracles that happened, essentially also military battles, right, where the Jews were able to overcome the enemy on a physical way. So, but Purim, the story that goes along with Purim, which is Megillat Esther, is in the biblical canon. The books that go along with Hanukkah are not. Also, fascinating questions here about the importance of different holidays and the messages that you can learn from them. But we're going to try and enjoy Purim. The kids are all over the place now in costumes. Purim is a great holiday, not just for the adults, because, with its philosophical ideas. And like I said, you can delve into it more from a religious place and what exactly all this means about where God is in the world. But when you're a kid and you're dressing up in these costumes and eating a tremendous amount of junk food, and there's all this like laughter and gaiety, it is really, really like the best holiday. The kids look forward to it all year. So I'm glad that even with all that's happening, some of the major Purim festivals, the ones in the cities, the bigger gatherings have been canceled. But like if you go into the kindergartens, 30, 35 little kids are all in costume, including my grandchildren this morning. One is a pirate and one was an I don't know what. And I'm getting pictures in from my kids. And it is a really glorious, glorious holiday. And we can let them enjoy it as little kids, as little innocent kids, and just enjoy the fun. And we can leave the wonder and maybe even the fear and curiosity or what the heck is going on. We can kick that can for them down the road and just let them enjoy it, because that's what childhood should be all about, is enjoying things. All the other things that turn us gray, we can, push to the adults who can take that on and just let the kids have a great time. So happy Purim, everybody, wherever you are. If you celebrate this week, let's make it as joyous as we can. In general, we need to make as many good times as we can, because we don't know what is going to happen in a minute, like I said, or in a day. And let's just hope that somebody out there knows what's happening, that wise decisions are being made by our leadership in terms of where to put people and how to quarantine people and how to keep people safe, that the medical systems are going to not collapse wherever they are needed. And that it turns out, when we look back, that this virus got a whole lot of people hysterical. But in the end, except if you were, sick anyway and immunocompromised anyway, and then it affected you, that people will go through it, and we won't find, like later on, that we didn't know that it was like Zika, which is a concern for me right now, with a pregnant daughter-in-law. So, that we don't find that these things were more potent or dangerous than they look to be. So wishing the scientists really Godspeed on figuring out a way to get this down and out. And like I said, our national leadership and our security leader, whatever it is, to make sure that everybody stays safe on all different levels. And what looks like some kind of global epidemic, in hindsight, will just look like a whole lot of hysteria. All right. So wishing everybody really a safe week wherever you are. And I don't know what it'll be next week. I might be sitting here taping this under quarantine, because who knows who's going to get exposed to whom this week. In the meantime, though, I'm not. And I'm taking full advantage of that and doing what I've got to do to make Purim great for my family. So take care, everybody. Eve Harow, Rejuvenation on the Land of Israel Network. Thanks once again to Ben and to Tabitha for making this happen. And of course, if I haven't said it already, a huge mazal tov to Ari and to Shana Abramowitz on becoming parents, on little Dvash Esther, honey Esther, sweet Esther. And may her life just be a smooth one. And may she never know of all this crazy stuff that happened just when she was taken off. So Eve Harow, Rejuvenation, you can write to me, eve@thelandofisrael.com. You can also be in touch with me about bringing me in to your cities. We still have to make plans for the future. We can't just shut down and say, okay, we don't know what we're doing for the next few months. Still planning on being in the States the end of April for the One Israel Fund Dinner until somebody decides otherwise. But hopefully by then, all this will have calmed down and have some time that I can come and see you as well. So feel free to write to me, to check out my website, www.eveharow.com. And let me know how you're thinking. Let me know what's going on in your neck of the woods. Broadcasting from the beautiful Judean Hills. This is Eve Harow. Shavua Tov. Take care, everybody. Goodbye for now.
This is Gil Hoffman, host of Inside Israel Today, here on the Land of Israel Network on thelandofisrael.com. My favorite holiday is Purim, and it's also a day where we have to be very thankful to God for saving the Jewish people. And just like he saved the Jewish people back then in the days where Persia was an evil empire, he is saving us again today. Happy Purim, listeners around the world. And thank you for listening.